Meeting to order. Let the minutes reflect all the board members are present. And we will just step right into public comments related to agenda item. No public comments this evening. Thank you. Item 6, consider an act on the T-class residency program. Mr. Parker.
Hello, and good evening. I'm presenting on behalf of Miss Anna Koenig. As you know, back in June, the board took action and approved the T-class grant with Texas A&M Commerce, and that was to ensure that we had new teachers, interns coming in to be in our buildings, learn the culture of Lovejoy ISD, and hopefully bring them on as permanent employees and teachers and staff after they finish their internship and their college work. We also have an opportunity to do that with the University of Texas at Dallas, which has a really strong education department and program. And so this memorandum of understanding would be for you guys to consider and take action on entering into that agreement with the University of Texas at Dallas.
You all have had a chance to review that in your board book. Do you have any questions or comments from Mr. Parker? Seems like a great deal for us, so.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
happy
just
to see these
broadening
coming in the door.
broadening our net. Yep, widening our net.
So I'd entertain a motion if anyone. So moved. Ann Smith, second. Amy Smith, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 7, TASB delegate assembly report.
So I got the opportunity to go down to San Antonio for the TASB Delegate Assembly. Marvin, I think you went last year, and it was a very good learning experience. I would encourage everybody to go at some point if you get the opportunity. There is real business being done, and we get a voice at that assembly, and we can influence policy at the state level. It's something I think we'll be talking more in depth when we start our subcommittee meetings on governance, and I think that some of the things I learned I'll share more in detail, but I do think there are things we can do as a board and as a community to help have a voice at the state level when policy is being made, and that was a big part of what I was learning about while I was down there. So I thought it was good. The key things that I think were on the agenda this year that they're talking a lot about are the teacher crisis that we're facing, not just locally, but statewide and nationwide. That was a huge focus. So I think that'll be a big focus in the upcoming legislative session when it starts next year. But some other points that we can kind of go through over time. But I think getting more actively involved in our grassroots local events when they come up, I think will be an important thing to start thinking about.
Really glad you were able to go to that. I'm excited also about kicking off our legislative committee to help prepare us to be in a position to be more on our toes and able to move the ball forward in that regard in all ways. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah,
to go.
It was a lot of good information. I felt like I got a much better understanding about how the TASB functions, how we can be a part of that voice to influence policy. And there's a lot of work that'll be involved in that, but I think I have a better understanding of it, and I was glad I went.
Yeah, great. Anyone have any questions for Jason? Again, on behalf of the board, thanks for doing that and sharing that with us. Look forward to hearing more about it as opportunities arise. So thank you. Anything to add to that, Ms. Cordell?
That experience always is humbling. Want to thank Jason for attending and giving up his personal time. It's always humbling from the standpoint of there are so many board of trustees members there, and that is a volunteer position. And so that there are so many wonderful parents and citizens and community members that are willing to give of their time towards Texas public schools makes me very grateful. And I would echo what Jason said. A big component of the conversation was the challenge that we are facing in Texas and really nationwide in regard to teacher shortages and the number of teachers and school administrators who are leaving the profession. So it makes all of our efforts in terms of recruitment, retention, and teacher and employee support that much more important.
All right, thank you very much. Item 9 is update on the BA TRE, Dr. Duplessis. Skipped right over that. Deloitte, Courageous Principal Institute. I was just talking about how cool that was.
Yeah, you don't want to miss this one.
I don't.
So we had the opportunity, privileged to go as a principal team and cabinet team a couple of weekends ago to Deloitte University to attend the Courageous Principals Institute. So we wanted to share a little bit, give you a little insight of our learning and the great leadership training that we received while we during that institute. So this started out, Courageous Principals training started out probably about 9 years ago. And the behind this is that the Deloitte, Jim Quigley, who's a former CEO of Deloitte, he was the global CEO and this was kind of his baby. He wanted to invest in school leaders, knowing that the principal was only second to making the greatest impact in comparison to the classroom teacher. So this is where this started. So they've trained over. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but let me slope back up a little bit. But it is developed for K-12 leaders. It originally started with principals. Then they saw the importance of bringing in leaders who supported principals to be involved in the training. So they expanded that to superintendents, assistant principals, cabinet level members to attend the trainings. So the goal is so that school leaders can be more effective and ensure that all of our students are ready to reach their full potential, which is all the reason that we get into this profession anyway, particularly as educators. So principal leadership is, as I mentioned, a significant factor driving high performance of students. They are positioned to impact teacher performance and student outcomes. So the most important factor is the classroom teacher, but the teacher has to have the support by the school administrator in order to perform at that high level. The more effective principals are leaders that are resourceful, instructive, and then effective so that our school systems can become highly efficient. And as I mentioned earlier, this is what research tells us. The principal is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school each day. So as I mentioned, it was launched as an education incentive to give principals in public education leadership and development training similar to what Deloitte's employees and consultants and accountants receive. And they're well known for their training. I know I have friends who, when they come out of college, my kids' friends who come out of college, when they can pretty much write their pathway if they are hired by Deloitte just because of the training that they receive in that company. It's offered 4 times a year and it's through an application process. So we actually applied last year and we were scheduled to go during February, but that's when the ice storm hit. So we were unable to travel. So Deloitte was gracious enough to let us tap into the September, early October training. And the cost of this is just it's really, I think before they've shared with us that it's just really just to cover just expenses just for staff that can support you along the way, because all of the facilitators who come, Deloitte facilitators, donate their weekend to come and train our leaders. And then also we have principals who have been through the Institute before, or leaders that also donate their weekend to come and train. So you're having the voice of the Deloitte trained facilitators and then also educators. So they help co-facilitate these small groups. So the programs train more than 3,000 principals from across the nation and have reached over 1 million students to date. And I would say when we attended, they were running two institutes together. They were providing the level 1, which we attended, and now they have a level 2, which we're hoping to attend in the future. So I would estimate there were probably just in our institute, probably over 300 to 400 principals and leaders from across the nation. It was not solely by Texas. So that was exciting to be able to network with these principals and other leaders. And what's interesting, we were talking to our principals today during cabinet meeting and had everyone reflect on the learning and what they took away. And one of our principals said, they're dealing with the same issues that we deal with in our schools here in Texas. So we're all dealing with, for example, it's what Kevin was talking about, the teacher shortage, recruiting highly qualified teachers in our schools. So we're not unique in that aspect. So it just over the 22.5-day training. So we left on Friday afternoon and we worked through midday on Sunday. And we were grouped with K-12 leaders, not just with Lovejoy, but we were divided into small groups with approximately about 16 to 20 leaders that facilitated these small groups. And so that was a way that we could network and learn from others. And we took kind of a problem solving approach where you took a problem of practice and we worked through what we called our business chemistry. So understanding how others operate. It's interesting. We've all kind of compared our business chemistry and we're all a little different, which is good. But that also allows us to know how to tap into others and their strengths in order to navigate the work that we're doing. It is a problem solve based learning. And there's a process of questioning training strategies that we're taught, and then how to facilitate change. And, that's what we deal with a lot in our world. And you guys are dealing with that as well, too. So it's just excellent training. I personally, this is my 4th time to attend and I learn something every time I go. So we all came back very rejuvenated after the training. This is a photo of the university. The training center is located in South Lake. It's a beautiful campus. A lot of walking trails and just where you can get outdoors and enjoy the outdoors. And then there are nice accommodations there too. Lots of learning going on. There are a few pictures here of the facilitator, and Mr. Quigley is up on the far right in that top left-hand corner or right-hand corner there. He was on a panel. You can see Mr. Coder there, and I think Katie are both are maybe in that picture too. He was helping facilitate one of his groups, and then there's Miss Haynes there in her breakout group doing some leading with that as well. We had time for fellowship and food, and I should have made food probably double the size font of fellowship. Food was everywhere. They do not allow you to go hungry. And they just really make it nice for everyone, and just where you can really focus on the work and the learning that you're doing over the weekend. And of course, we had to have some fun too. A couple of the guys here were having some fun and playing games. And then we had they had some dancing going on too in a band. So a couple of people got out there. I don't know if Sancy and Anna knew that I was going to post that picture up there, but we had a fun time. In the evenings, that's where they allowed time for fellowship and fun. And then here's a photo here of our team and our first day there, start kicking off. And I think that's the last photo there. So we're looking forward to it. A couple of our team members were not able to attend, so we are working on applications for them to attend level 1, and then we are hoping that we can apply and get involved in level 2. And the nice thing about this is that our travel is minimum just because it's here in our backyard in South Lake. I had a gentleman in my group that was from Hawaii, so traveled a long way to come. So any questions about the Courageous Principal Institute?
I know my company is CEO and CFO, and they all think of it as being just super quality. Obviously not the education one, but
Yes.
really think it's quality. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
That you had such a good experience.
I just encourage us to continue to take advantage of opportunities, especially with Deloitte. They also run a CEO roundtable for banks and then for financial services companies. So they hit a lot of different segments of the marketplace, and for us to be able to leverage that kind of expertise and those perspectives to help enhance our leaders is really good. So appreciate the participation and being involved and encourage future opportunities.
Thank you.
All right, item 9. Dr. Duplessis.
Good evening. I know you were excited about the VATRE topic, so we are happy to share with you just some brief updates. We've had a number of presentations with lots of different community groups that have been very engaged and very helpful in us determining additional information we may be able to provide. So in the way of update this month, we're just sharing. We try to make a one-pager. It's front and back, but this is really a great just synopsis of all the information. I know on the website, step 3 was the last step of the 3 kind of units of information provided. So the step 3 has been published now, and that contains the information we went over at the last meeting about the ballot language, more details on early voting and elections and all that. But this is also posted on the site. So the idea is this is something that can be left behind. We have a lot of folks asking questions, or they may want to try to repeat something that they've heard. And this is just a convenient way to encapsulate all the information about the VATRE that we have put out there, either by presentation or the website. But it focuses on number 1, our financial priorities, which of course are employee compensation and restoring the fund balance. It goes through the VATRE options and what the voting outcomes could be. And again, the third item on the back is property tax owner scenarios, just providing more detailed information on that. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was aware what resources are currently available that have been most recently updated. We have also posted the presentation that we've been doing in the community on the website. So a lot of that is easily accessible. We just want to make sure that we're providing that information. We have received a few questions. Most people are coming to the presentations and engaging in dialogue there, but we have had a few questions submitted through the FAQ link on the website. And so we encourage people to do that, as well as submit if they would like to have a presentation for any community group that they may have. But a couple of the questions that we have received, one of the first was just kind of a general question about their tax bill. So now that people have received their tax bills, they ask questions like, well, my tax bill is going up, so the district's already receiving more money, right? And unfortunately, that may not necessarily be true. So the biggest driver of the change in tax bill from last year to this year for most homeowners is going to be the change in property value. So for the average Lovejoy ISD property, homestead property, you're looking at about property value of about $675,000, and their annual tax bill of about $9,000 probably went up about $900 from last year. Whereas for that same valued property, for the VATRE, the change would be about $201, while the homestead exemption would save them $221 compared to the prior year. So we understand that a lot goes into those tax bills. So when we do our presentations in the community, we do share information on what each of those levers are, and how that impacts the estimated total bill, and just kind of some valuations of the difference there. Second question we've gotten is, what is tax rate compression? So we do share with folks that each year, for the last several years, the legislature has compressed the tax rate. That is on the M&O side. It is on the tier 1 side. So it's the rate before any additional pennies may have been added through past or current VATREs. So tax rate compression has reduced our MCR to 0.8046. And so we expect that that will continue for the next several years. And what that does is the legislature is providing tax relief, essentially, recognizing the increasing property values, compressing the rate lowers the tax bill. In relation, it doesn't lower it quite as much as in our area that the property values are increasing, but it's designed to provide some level of relief. So that's probably the second most common question we've received lately. I think the third one I jotted down was that, how did you arrive at the 3.17 cents? Because it sounds very precise, and it is. Essentially, the legislature determines how much a local school district can alter their tax rate to increase revenue. So the 3.17 cents is the calculation that would cap us in Lovejoy ISD. So while it is estimated to generate the $640,000 additional in net revenue, and so some folks have asked, well, can we go for more? Because we see how much it costs to do increases in teacher compensation. That's really the cap that we can achieve. So that's why it's the 3.17 cents. So again, we just wanted to review some updated resources that we've made available and give you a few samples of questions that might have been asked more recently. But that at this time, that's all I have in terms of VATRE update. I will also share that on Thursday at 6 p.m. we are doing a Zoom presentation. All of ours so far have been live. So hopefully this gives folks an opportunity to visit with us about that if they're not able to come in person.
And then will you put that up on the website after will it be recorded?
So I think we just discussed today, recording that session. So we're setting up for that.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, board?
I think today is the last day to register to vote too,
Oh, thank you for noting that. Yes.
especially our young voters that have never voted.
Yes. Very good point. Thank you for saying that.
All right, item 10, looks like you're still the winner. Our first reading in our financial audit.
All right, so this evening we wanted to provide a bit of a preview. So none of this information is final, but it's a lot of information. And so we want to make sure that as it evolves, we're kind of sharing out the things that we do know. So first, we're going to talk about our annual financial audit. You may remember this is for those folks that may have not seen a presentation in regard to a financial audit for a school district before. It is an independent review of the district's financials that's done really for the Board of Trustees, who engages an independent auditor to review that information. And their role is to review the accuracy of that fiscal information and provide an opinion of support or any cautions that need to be noted in terms of financial reporting and compliance. As far as school districts are concerned, we do have a CFC legal policy that dictates all the requirements that the Board of Education sets forth for these financial audits. We do have to submit that audit to TEA by November 27th. That's because our fiscal year ends June 30th. That's the day that we have to have that submitted. It is subject to review by the state auditor, and we do have to post it on our website. If you go to the financial services website for Lovejoy ISD, you'll see all of the past audits or annual financial reports that resulted from those audits provided. It's very helpful information. As far as the procedure, generally in July, we start doing our audit preparation. So we have some fantastic people in our office who put together a lot of information. This is one of those items I've mentioned in prior meetings that we have moved to digital. We used to provide lots of paper and binders, but we're now doing a lot more in terms of digitizing that information. And the firm that the board has engaged for that audit has done a lot to advance that as well. So we prepare a lot of information in advance. They also come and do an on-site review in August. They'll do lots of inquiry. They speak with our finance department as well as areas like payroll and human resources. And then they'll send us additional questions that they have or additional items they'd like to review, questions they may have through September. About this time, we're doing our final adjusting journal entries as a result of everything that was reviewed for the annual year. So there may be a few journal entries that we need to do some accounting adjustments before the end of the year is closed out. And in October, the auditor will come and do their report directly to the board, and that will take place at our regular board meeting later this month. So the good news is they are also really a partner in terms of helping us identify any procedural changes we should make to really optimize everything that we're doing on the finance side. So a couple of the items that we noted this year, is looking at the way we treat account balances and student nutrition. And so we may look at those more readily as deferred revenue instead of cash. That's just a different accounting treatment because, as many of you know, we may load our students' account so that we don't have to keep paying every day. We've also talked about our mileage reimbursement process. There were a couple of times we noted last year where mileage reimbursement was provided prior to travel. And so we're not going to do that anymore. We're making sure that everything is reviewed and those are only occurring post-travel. We also noted there was a trip for training for student nutrition in which a per diem was provided instead of actual reimbursement for meals. And so we can't do that with student nutrition funds. So these are some of the things that as we go through it, maybe one time that something happened, but we want to make sure that we put processes and procedures in place so they don't occur in the future. None of these are findings of non-compliance. They're just kind of housekeeping issues that we want to make sure we do address from a procedural standpoint. We also noted that there are a number of what we call PIC spending requirements. PIC is Program Intent Code. So TEA sets up, especially after House Bill 3 in 2019, they set up all these accounting codes where we have to track certain things that we spend money on. One of those is CTE, Career Tech. When I got here, the big one that we had missed was CCMR, our College Career and Military Readiness. So typically we're spending our funds in all these areas, but from year to year, the allocation that we're required to meet in terms of our required spending may change. So from last year or 2 years ago to 21-22, we had a big change in our CTE PIC allotment. And so it increased by almost $800,000. That was a result of an increase in students enrolled in CTE courses. So that increased the amount of funding that we got, but we also noticed that we didn't have as many staff members coded to CTE. So we're going through the review process with the auditor right now. There are a few things that we think we can recode that we just didn't have classified correctly. So those would be adjusting journal entries, but we're also going to review this going forward and make sure that we're tracking those allotment increases. We didn't get that allotment increase to the near final. Summary of finance was published by TEA, so there wasn't a lot of time to adjust any of those coding entries. So we're working on that right now. There was also a small difference in bilingual of about $4,000. So we're also going back and working on that as we close out the fiscal year. Those were kind of some of the things that we highlighted as we were going through all of that information. Like I said before, there were no material inaccuracies in the financial statements. We do expect to have an unmodified opinion, which provides reasonable assurance of no material issues or issues of control. I did put this together before we met with the auditor again yesterday. And so in Texas, if you spend more than any functional budget that the board has adopted, TEA commonly refers to that as a busted function. And they'll send you a letter in the mail and say you spent more than the budget you adopted in this particular functional area. There is a couple areas where we will probably receive those letters. There's nothing negative that occurs. It's a notice. And so the areas that we did experience busted functions in the last year were student nutrition commodities, which was not surprising considering the increase in costs we had to student nutrition supplies. The other area was recapture because it went up dramatically at the end of the year. And then I think the other one was legal fees. So these were areas that were not large or unexpected, but we'll continue to monitor those going forward. I did want to mention too on the PIC spending requirements, we would not experience any reductions even if we don't meet that spending requirement for this year. They use, I think, a 5-year average of our expenditures. So we're still well within our requirements for that. But we certainly wouldn't want to wait until 5 years. We continue to monitor those going forward. Each year, the auditor also picks a major fund, a major program or federal fund to review. And this year they selected student nutrition. And so there were no findings with that either. So the good news is our beginning fund balance for last year was a little over 8.5 million in 74 days of operating expenses. I didn't put the final number up there because, as I said, we're still working through a few adjusting entries to close out the year, but we're expecting it to be about $11.2 million in ending fund balance, which originally we had estimated about 10.5 million. So even a little bit better to the good than we thought. But again, Carl will be coming to the board meeting and sharing all the final information at the end of this month. But all in all, the net position of the district improved significantly, not only from the standpoint of the fund balance, but also from debt service. So the board did allow us to do some early redemption. And so that's further enhanced our position on the debt service side as well. So really a lot of good news and outcomes from that. And we'll have the final number of days of fund balance and actual amount here shortly. We also looked at our first rating. We were, you may remember last year, we talked about the fund balance being under 75 days. The first rating is the financial accountability system that school districts are rated at in Texas. And last year was the first year we had ended school, or 2 years ago was the first year we had ended under 75 days of fund balance, which could have had us lose points for indicator 6, but we didn't have a 25% decrease over the prior 3 years. So we didn't experience a decrease then. Fortunately, we won't experience a decrease on indicator 6 this time either, because we've actually had a pretty substantial increase in fund balance year over year. So we've made some progress. And as it relates to the first report, the final rating has not yet been published, but TEA provides a preliminary rating in July. And at that time, we're allowed to review it and submit if we think there's anything wrong with any of the ratings that they provided. So we do review that. It is not final yet. We'll have a public hearing in November when they say it is final, but it rarely changes unless the district appeals something as a part of it. So this is always feels like really old data to me, because your 21-22 rating, which is what we just received, is actually based on 2020, 2021 data. So we're looking at a couple years ago now. So the rating that we received on a preliminary basis was an 88. So that's the first time that the district's received a B on the first rating system for some time. Just in relation, the prior year was a rating of 96. And the last time it was higher than that was in 17-18 when we received a rating of 100. So again, this is based on 2020, 2021 data. And I put a little snip of the indicators that we did not get the maximum amount of points on. The biggest difference is indicator 11. Indicator 11 reads, was the ratio of long-term liabilities to total assets for the school district sufficient to support long-term solvency? If the school district's increase of students and membership over 5 years was 7% or more, then the school district automatically passes this indicator. So we rated 2 out of 10 on that indicator. And when we went back and looked at prior year data, we actually would have been rated 2 out of 10 in some of those prior years. But because of that clause about the 5-year average of student enrollment, we were automatically passing it because of that increase in enrollment historically. So now that our enrollment has leveled out and is slightly decreasing, we no longer have that protection for that indicator. So the other 2 indicators that we rated 8 out of 10 on, we also rated 8 out of 10 on in the prior year. Those are 8 and 12, looking at the measure of current assets to current liabilities to cover short-term debt, and the debt per $100 of assessed property value ratio being sufficient to support future debt repayments. And so we did talk about that briefly when we reviewed with Samco, our financial advisor, the options to early pay some of those bond series that you authorized us to do earlier. So hopefully over time, as we look back and aren't looking at 2021 data, some of those decisions will reap changes in those ratings in future years. We will have, again, that public hearing on November 28th, but the net position that is continuing to improve from last year and going into this year that the auditor will review will further help with some of these indicators. So we're expecting, like I said, the ending fund balance to be closer to 11.3 million from the beginning of the 8.5 that we had in the prior year. So that is a brief summary of the audit process, where we are to date and the first preliminary rating. If any questions?
Other than the small items that you noted on procedural differences, were there any other significant changes to our accounting practices or policies or anything that came up during this audit?
No, those were really the primary items that we talked about. And we did talk about some procedural things on the functional expenditures and things like that. But that was everything that the auditor mentioned. We've listed there so far.
Did they have any recommendations for adjustments that we ultimately passed on making?
I think that we did have a more lengthy conversation about student nutrition in terms of recognizing receipts, whether we do that as cash or deferred revenue, simply because we're still rebuilding our fund balance. I should also note that about 300,000 of that increase in fund balance is from student nutrition rebuilding their fund balance. Since we rolled that into 101, now it's part of the general fund, so it's helping. But good question.
How far are we on the ratio on that item 11 on the first rating that dropped from 10 to 2? Is that something that's feasible to get within ratio over what kind of time period do we know? Or is that a question for the auditor maybe when they come?
That's a good question. Our 22-23 rating will be based on 21-22 data. So I expect there to be some progress, but it's going to take several years to increase that particular indicator.
So is this is just measuring our debt effectively against the balance sheet of the district?
Yeah, they're looking at the long-term liabilities versus assets.
We paid some off.
Yes.
So that helps, right?
It will help our net position.
It's definitely a lagging indicator because
Yes.
we have accelerated our pay downs
Mhm.
and improved that situation. So obviously, when that testing catches up to our current data, this will improve dramatically. As far as how much, I couldn't say, but
Yes,
it would be
will.
better.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11, District Improvement Team and District Improvement Plan update.
Yes, I wanted to provide you an update of what's going to be coming to the, for your approval at the board meeting this month, the regular board meeting this month. We'll be bringing forward the district improvement plans and also the campus improvement plans. And this is an annual process that you go through to approve these plans. Just want to give you some overview of what we've been doing in preparation for this and the work and why we do district improvement planning and campus improvement planning. It is required through the Texas Education Code that we follow a planning and decision-making process at the district level and at the campus level. The purpose of the plans is to establish a collaborative approach with multiple stakeholders with the goal to improve student achievement. And the purpose of the teams is to collaborate as an advisory committee to improve clarity, develop and communicate educational ideas and goals in order to enhance the learning for all students. So it's really a continuous improvement process that we go through. It's not a one-time event. So we recently met with our district improvement team, and the team is made up of my eyes are just getting, I can't read across the room here. It's comprised of members that are district and campus educators, teachers, parents, students, business representatives, and community leaders. That's what is recommended. We don't always have students. A lot of districts don't have students. We do not have students in our district improvement team. Campuses may, some of your secondary campuses may have students on those teams. And through these committees, we develop together the district improvement plans. So just the composition of the teams, and this is in our policy, and it's required that 2/3 are classroom teachers. Then we have parents, we have business, community members, and then district staff that are on the committee. And this year's district improvement team, these are our members here. So you can see it's made up predominantly of our teaching staff. We have 2 business members. We have non-teaching professional staff. and a couple of parents, community, and then district representatives. So what does the team do? As I mentioned, it serves in an advisory committee, but we look in all aspects of the law and what the local policy requires. We look at planning, we look at staffing, we make advisory, we look at budgeting on how it impacts these areas, curriculum, school organization, and staff development. So what are our outcomes? Of course, it's improving student achievement. It takes us through an effective planning process at the district and the campus level. It involves community members, so it increases involvement. It holds us accountable for our objectives that we have for ourselves in meeting the needs of students, a communication pathway, collaborative decision-making, how we're utilizing our funds to execute the plan, and the coordination of regular and special programs. So what we have done here in Lovejoy is that we took advantage of the recent strategic planning process that we went through, and also the board priorities that were approved recently. So we take that information. We basically went through a needs assessment process when we were doing our strategic planning with our community members, staff, and parents last spring, and also through the Financial Sustainability Committee that also gave us some data. So we start with the needs assessment that's ongoing. We determine our areas of improvement, and it's always related back to student achievement. We identify goals, and what you will see that we'll be bringing forward our goals are the board priorities in those 5 areas. We identify measurable performance objectives. So that's what holds us accountable as we progress, monitor what's going on and how we're executing our plan. We build in strategies. You will see in the plans coming forward in a couple of weeks that you're going to see some of the strategies that were outlined and determined through this Lovejoy 2030 team. And then we have measures that we put in place throughout the year that we have benchmark dates that we're monitoring and adjusting as needed through a formative and a summative process. And then if we needed, we include funding sources and needs within the plans too. So just as a timeline of where we're headed, we met on September the 29th with our district improvement team and brought forward the proposed goals and performance objectives and received feedback from the committee and made adjustments based on that. We are now working on building in strategies to those performance objectives. Our campuses then take our district improvement plan, and they build their plan that it aligns their goals, and performance objectives will align with that, but they'll be customized based on the needs of their campus. So we'll be bringing on October 24th, both the district and the campus plans for your approval and review. We'll come back together as a committee on the DI district improvement team to review our progress and performance objectives. Then we'll come back again on April the 18th, and then we will come forward as we did this year to show you where we landed at the end of the year on meeting our goals and objectives. So you'll see some of those goals or performance objectives that we had in place for 21-22 are going to be carried forward to 22-23. You'll also see some of the House Bill 3 goals that are going to be included in the plan as well too, that you approved recently. Questions? Thank you.
Questions, anyone? Thank you for the update. And with that, I have no announcements, so we will be adjourned unless you have any. We are adjourned.